But there's something about Van Gogh's legacy which is much more important than his fathering this or that ism of modern art. Vincent's passionate belief was that people wouldn't just see his pictures, but feel the rush of life in them.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. 100 years ago today, on the 16th of May 1890, Vincent van Gogh finally left the Asylum of Remy and travelled north to Paris, where he joined his brother. And incredibly, he was only in Paris for a day or two before he went on from Paris to Auvers-sur-Oise, and that is about an hour outside Paris, slightly to the north and to the west. And so basically Van Gogh spent just over a year in Saint-Remy. Then he traveled to Paris to have a brief reunion with his brother, with his sister-in-law, and with their newborn child named after Vincent. Very brief, it was 1 or 2 days. And then he was on to, as I say, Auvers. And something that I really wanted to do, for various reasons I wasn't able to do it. I wanted to go through the letter that really changed everything, and it was the letter of May 1st to his brother, where he basically said, you know, I'm going to join you or whatever. So although Van Gogh left on the 16th, the next letter that he wrote was actually from Auvers-sur-Oise. Bear in mind, he wouldn't write any letters while he was with his brother. And so the next letter after the 16th was written on the 20th of May. So between the 16th of May this year and the 20th, I'm going to catch you up on around about 6 or 7 letters that were exchanged between the two brothers in terms of the preparations for this trip that Vincent van Gogh was about to do. So I'm not going to spend too much time meandering around that. Let's get to the letter of the 1st of May 1890. And bear in mind, about 2 weeks later, that was when he finally left the asylum. So all of this is, he's made a decision, and now they're making arrangements. So Vincent van Gogh writes, "My dear brother, today as Mr. Perron has come back, I read your kind letters, then the letters from home as well, and that did me an enormous amount of good in giving me back a little energy, or rather the desire, to climb back up again from the dejected state I'm in. I thank you very much for the etchings you've chosen, some of the very ones that I've already liked for a long time, the David, the Lazarus, the Samaritan, and the large etching of the wounded man, and you've added the blind man and other small etchings," and he sort of goes on. So what I want to bring up here is, what does it take Van Gogh to get out of this state of madness, the state of illness, whatever is going on with him? How does he get out of the state? Well, you know, the answer is when he gets letters from his family. So in other words, you can say he's bipolar, or he's depressed, or he's got whatever. Well, as soon as he gets some letters from his family, he's suddenly in a good mood. It's the same thing as if you're in lockdown right now and you hear good news, you're going to be in a different state of mind. Right? So this was obviously what had happened was, when the doctor wasn't around, Van Gogh was actually owed letters to him. So his family had written to him, but he wasn't able to get those letters because the doctor conveyed them to him. And in that time, imagine what it's like, 2 weeks. Bear in mind, this is 1890, there's no internet access, you know, there's not really a terrible amount of electricity. I mean, on that specific question, electricity had only been around for about 11 years. It was sort of invented, if that's the word, in the 1880s, right? So I'm just saying it was a very different world, and it was a world where it was easy to get bored and easy to get sort of, you know, a sense of being really isolated, because you weren't really getting news anyway. It wasn't like you could turn on your television, or even something like a newspaper was fairly new at that time, although there were things like newspapers. They just weren't the voluminous things that we know today. They were kind of more brief little pamphlets in that time. So, you know, not getting letters was kind of a big deal. It was kind of like for the modern person now, being off Facebook for a month or 6 months even, you know, just feeling very out of it, I guess, right? And so obviously when he gets letters, he gets quite a few, and suddenly he's in a good mood. Anyway, he goes on to say, the unfortunate thing is that the people here are too curious, idle, and ignorant about painting for it to be possible for me to practice my profession. So he's kind of just saying that, I'm not sure if he's making some kind of snide reference to all, or if it's just Saint-Remy, but he's just saying, you know, the people here, this isn't a good place for artists. I'm going to need to head back to the sophisticated folk in and around Paris. You know, the art crowd, the moneyed folk that keep the artists going, you know, of the city. And he goes on to say, this is what one could always observe, that you and I made an effort here in the same direction as some others who weren't understood either and were bitterly saddened by circumstances. He's kind of just saying that he's not the only one who's come to this part of the world and made an effort, and the people just weren't interested. You know, you must remember that part of the south of France are kind of, there are a lot of peasants, there are a lot of sort of farm folk. They're not interested in art, and they're certainly not interested in art that's not traditional art, if I can put it that way. Anyway, and this is where Van Gogh gets to the point. He says, now rather you propose coming back to the north, and I accept. And how he should have written that is to say, now rather you propose that I come back to the north, or that I head north. And he says, I accept. So this letter on the 1st of May is sort of the official handshake between brothers, where his brother said, you know, I think you it's probably best if you come back, if you come back this way, you know, and I'll sort out a place for you. And Van Gogh is kind of like, yeah, I accept your invitation. Bear in mind, Van Gogh is the older brother, but he's also the, I won't say the poorer brother, but the Theo is the one holding the purse strings, and it's not as though it's Theo's money, it's actually Van Gogh's inheritance, but Theo's in charge. So there is this kind of, they're kind of equal partners in a way, you know, they're both brothers and they're both into the art world, but because of Van Gogh's, I guess, habits, his drinking habits, his womanizing habits, I think his father said, well, look, we're going to leave your inheritance with someone else, and they're going to manage it for you, and they'll give you, you know, gradual amounts so that you can stay in control. And to be honest, I actually know someone in the same situation, someone who can't handle money. They either blow it on alcohol or whatever, and this person, I won't say who it is, but it's someone close to them, gets that person's money and then gives it to them physically every month, rather than that the money just automatically goes to this person. And so this person basically is a kind of a guardian, right, in a way, and just deals with the money side, given that this person just isn't able to look after it themselves, even though it's an adult. I mean, not even a young adult either. Anyway, so this is really interesting. Van Gogh says, I've had too hard a life to kick the bucket as a result, or to lose the power to work. Now, I don't know how a Van Gogh scholar couldn't see that and say, that doesn't sound like a suicidal guy to me. I mean, his own reinforcement for why he wants to leave the asylum is to say, you know what, I've had a really hard life. I wanna go and live. I wanna go out there and kick ass and take names. You know, I want to taste it all. I want to see it all. So, in this letter, is hardly giving away signs of mental illness, of hopelessness. He's inspired. He's ready to take on the world, right? And him saying that he has the desire to climb back up again, and he's grateful to his brother, and he says he's got energy. He's felt an enormous amount of good, and he's felt energy flowing back into him. And all these artworks that he refers to his brother, it shows you the passion is there, the interest is there. It's hardly the spirit of a broken man. It's hardly the spirit of a madman. And every single letter Van Gogh writes is completely coherent. It's completely clear. It's completely purposeful. It's completely appropriate to the circumstances. And so he goes on to say, so Gauguin and Guillaume, the two of them, want to do an exchange for the landscape of the Alpilles. And I guess he's quite encouraged by that. He says there are two of them, only I think that the one I finished last, and so on. And then he says, I'm perhaps going to try to work from the Rembrandts, and talks about tones and sort of other details. And then he says, included is Gauguin's letter, do what you think best as regards the exchange, take the ones you like for yourself. So there is still this connection with this friend of his that again, Van Gogh seems to have this hero worship for Gauguin. Gauguin seems to have a reluctant friendship with Vincent, kind of based on the fact that he's got a relationship with his brother who's an art dealer. So Gauguin just seems to be dotting the I's and crossing the T's in maintaining a civil relationship with Vincent. I don't think because he particularly likes him. I don't think because he particularly is impressed by him. I think he's trying to get into the good graces of the art agent, who is his brother, the art dealer. And then Vincent says, if I'd been able to work without this bloody illness, how many things I could have done, isolated from the others, according to what the land would tell me. But yes, this journey is well and truly finished. Anyways, what consoles me is the very great desire that I have to see you again, you, your wife, and your child, and so many friends who have remembered me in my misfortune. As for that matter, I don't stop thinking of them either. So again, he talks about he's got a very great desire to see his brother. He also does refer to this bloody illness. So he's not unaware that he's not completely healthy. But is it mental illness? Is it madness? Or is it an actual physical ailment? And we know that he had syphilis. So there really is no mystery there. There really is no mystery there. And then Van Gogh goes on and he says, I'm almost sure that I'll soon get better in the north, at least for quite a long time, while still apprehensive of a relapse in a few years' time, but not immediately. So this is Van Gogh's own prognosis for himself, is saying, I'm confident, I'm encouraged, I'm positive, I see myself improving. I see myself getting well. Again, that is hardly the state of mind of a depressive, of a person who's going to be suicidal in 2 months. And we're going to see again, does this state of mind change drastically? And if it does change drastically, does it then deteriorate? Does he go down like a slope and into despair? Because that's what happens to a lot of people who become suicidal. Or does he have his off days, right? But all we can see here is that he's very positive, and he in terms of his diagnosis of himself, he says, things may not go well later on, but I actually think I'm going to be okay. That's what he says. He goes on to say, that's what I imagine after having observed the other patients here, some of whom are considerably older than I am among the young ones. So he's kind of saying, I expect to go on living for a while. That's actually kind of what he's saying here. He says, I may have a relapse, but in a few years' time. And bear in mind the life expectancy in 1890 wasn't very long. You couldn't expect to live really beyond your mid-40s, and if you're lucky, your late 40s, right? And Van Gogh was 37. So in a weird way, there was this sort of general perception that maybe you had another 3-4 years, if you were lucky, 10 years, right, in that time. And he's basically saying, you know what, I think the odds are showing that I'm gonna be around here for a couple more years, not a couple more weeks, not a couple more months. Anyway, he goes on to say, fortunately the letters from our sister and mother were very calm. Our sister writes very well and describes a landscape or an aspect of the town as if it were a page from a modern novel. I always urge her to busy herself with domestic rather than artistic things, for I know that she's already too sensitive and at her age would have difficulty in finding the way to artistic development. I'm really afraid that she too will suffer from a thwarted artistic will, and that's kind of what he's suffering from, a thwarted artistic will. And I mean, how eloquent he is at describing that, isn't he? He goes on to say she's so energetic that she'll make up for it. He said, I talked with Mr. Peyron about the situation, and he told me that it was almost impossible for me to bear my fate here, that not knowing anything very clear regarding the line to take seemed preferable to me to return to the north. So what he's also saying is that his doctor is kind of saying, dude, I can understand that you can be struggling here and not happy here. It's got to be tough bearing your fate here. And there's also a sense that the doctor himself isn't quite sure what is wrong with Van Gogh. And he's just thinking, well, you're not like the other patients. You're not mad, but we're not quite sure what is wrong with you. Something is wrong, but maybe what you need is, I don't know, maybe it's warmer weather or a change in scenery or people around you that care for you. Anyway, Vincent then he starts to sort of sign off, and he's kind of saying, right, in terms of his return to the north, he's kind of saying to his brother, if you think this is a good idea and if you suggest a date when you expect me over there in Paris, I would have someone from here accompany me part of the way as far as Tarascon or Lyon. So he's kind of saying, can you let's get specific about this. When do you want me to leave? And if you're concerned about me, I'll have somebody go along with me some of the way in case something happens. And then he says, then you would wait for me or have someone wait for me at the station in Paris. Do what seems best to you. For the time being, I would leave my furniture behind in Arles. And one wonders what his furniture is. Is it like 2 chairs and a bed? Anyway, he goes on, he says, it's with friends, meaning his furniture. He says, I'm sure they'd send it the day I wanted it, but the carriage and packing would be almost what it's worth. I consider this as a shipwreck, this journey. Well, one can't do as one wants and as one ought to do either. So what he's also acknowledging here is that leaving the asylum is a big deal. And what I mean is it's expensive. It's expensive for a guy like him who's destitute. He doesn't really have a job. it's expensive for him to just leave. It's expensive for him to catch the train all the way north, all the way across country. And so he says this situation is like a shipwreck, this journey, but he needs to do it. He's got to do it. Anyway, he goes on to say, once I got out a little into the park, I recovered all my clarity for work. I have more ideas in my head than I could ever put into action, but without it dazzling me. So he's kind of, again, he's just saying how inspired he is, how much energy he is, how he's ready to work and ready to go out there, right, and slay dragons. He says, the brushstrokes go like a machine. So based on that, I dare believe that in the north I would rediscover my confidence once freed from surroundings and circumstances which I neither understand nor wish to understand. He's kind of just saying, in this asylum there are crazy people, there are really afflicted people, and I don't really want to try and figure it out. I don't belong here, right? That's what he's saying. Then he adds, he says, it was very kind of Mr. Peyron to write to you. He's writing to you again today. I leave him regretting that I have to leave him. Good handshake to you and Joe. I thank her very much for her letter. Ever yours, Vincent. I'm not going to spend any more time on this, but I will be back tomorrow dealing with the letters following this particular letter. What I want to just impress upon you is that the decision essentially to leave Saint-Remy was on the 1st of May. So around about 2 weeks and 2 days back from today, 130 years ago. And then it took 16 days, 16 days for the arrangements to culminate in Van Gogh walking out of the asylum, getting on a train and heading off to Paris. And that's what the next couple of letters are going to be about. And again, we want to look at his state of mind, look at his concerns. There's even a letter, I think, from the doctor. Look at what they're saying, look at what his brother's saying, and then also look at what Auvers-sur-Oise is going to be like. And his transition there. Was he happy when he got there? What did he think when he got there? And as a special treat to you guys, last year this time, in fact it was about the 14th, I think it was, I left Saint-Remy by train. I also went to Paris, and then I went from the same day, I went from Paris to Auvers-sur-Oise, right? So I'm going to be showing you photos of that, and in the same way that I took you through I'm going to be taking you through Auvers. We're going to get to know it through my photos, but also through Van Gogh's art and also through his letters. And bear in mind, we're now getting very close to the end of Van Gogh's life. These would be the last 2.5 months of his life, right? So May 14, I'm just looking through my diary. May 14 was the day that I headed to Paris, and then Auvers, and so I'll be showing you photos. One thing I remember quite well from the day that I left was I was standing at the station in Arles waiting for the train, and I just noticed these beautiful bright red poppies. It was quite early in the morning, and the sun was shining on these poppies, but on the railway tracks below the platform, and I kind of looked one way and the other way, and I jumped off the platform, and I kind of crouched down to take a shot of these poppies on the tracks. And obviously that's quite a risky thing to do. To make it even worse, a train was actually approaching the station, but slowly. But I mean, so I literally did jump off the platform. Here I am on the tracks just to take a photo, and the sort of station police guy kind of went nuts and ran up to me, and even it kind of looked at one point like he was going to arrest me, like I'd really broken a law, and I kind of just pleaded tourism. I'm just a tourist, sorry. And I mean, it wasn't the cleverest thing to do, but it was also no big deal. I just jumped down, scooted down, took a photo, jumped back up. It wasn't like the train came 5 seconds later, maybe came 30 seconds later. But yeah, it certainly wasn't the safest thing or the cleverest thing I've ever done. But anyway, that was my last day in Aal, and that was on the 14th. So around about the same time Van Gogh went to Auvers, from that part of the woods I went as well. So that was kind of what I was trying to do, is just retrace the steps at the same time, just to get a sense of what he experienced, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you guys. Okay, so I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening. Obviously, if you're interested in this coverage of Van Gogh, which I am going to be ramping up a little bit, please subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Those interested in the Madeleine McCann case, I'm also going to be doing a video on the Smithman sighting, something that I feel really strongly about. So I'm going to be doing a video about that probably sometime over the weekend. On Patreon at 11 Eastern Standard Time, I'm doing a group Skype chat with people on Patreon from the $3 tier and higher, and we're going to be chatting just informally about true crime related stuff, and often our discussions are about 2 hours or so. So if you're interested in not typing a comment but actually speaking to me and speaking to other people on the True Crime Rocket Science Forum, quite a nice group there, from all around the world. Literally, it's not just America, it's also Norway, Sweden, Australia, England, and so on. So Canada as well. So for those interested, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. There are already 8 audiobooks on the site, and obviously you could sign up for 1 month, and if you work really, really quickly, you can get all of that content in 1 month if that's what you wanted. Okay, and that's about it. Wherever you are in the world, stay safe, look after that social distancing, and I'll see you guys next time.